Hi, this is Sue Jackson of the Book by Book blog, and I'm here today with my usual weekly Friday reads, but also my kickoff for middle grade March. This is a BookTube challenge that I just learned about a couple weeks ago. It's hosted by Books and Jams, and I will include the link down below in case you want to join in the fun too. And the idea is just to read middle grade books in March. So this works great for me. I've got lots of middle grade books on my TBR, both physically on the shelf, and also I have a huge audio backlog, which includes plenty of middle grade books. So I do generally, even though my kids are all grown now, I do generally read at least one middle grade book a month, sometimes on audio, sometimes in print. So this works out great for me. And I thought it'd be fun to play along and try to hit the categories. So Books and Jams has set up 5 categories for middle grade books. And you don't have to read 5 middle grade books in March to participate in the challenge, she said. Even if you just read one middle grade book, that's part of it. So, but here are her prompts, and I went through particularly my audio backlog last week, because I actually have a really busy reading month coming up just with book groups, and there's an annual event that I go to that couldn't be held the last 2 years, and we're finally reuniting. It's called Booktopia, and I'll include a link down below. It's held at the Northshire Bookstore in Manchester, Vermont. Fabulous town, amazing bookstore. And this event, it's not like your typical book event. It's not like just an author talking. It's not just like BEA. It's a small event, like 150 people or less. And their tagline is where readers and authors meet. So there's a group of maybe 8 to 10 authors, maybe 100 or to 150 readers, and you spend the weekend together, hanging out at this awesome bookstore, eating out together. They have different events all weekend long. You do sign up for slots where each author talks about their book, but it's more like a book club than a typical author event at a bookstore. So it's a lot of fun, and I've got a big reading list for that. So anyway, March is already busy. So I've mostly filled in the 5 categories for middle grade March with audiobooks, because I can kind of fit those in while I'm reading other things. I'll just run down the categories with you real quick. Category 1 is 5 or more books in the title. Well, I happen to have a graphic novel, middle grade graphic novel I've been meaning to read that fits that perfectly. It's called The Creepy Case Files of Margot Malou, The Tangled Web. I love this series. So I'll tell you more about it in my Friday reads, but this is book 3 in the series. It's definitely got more than 5 words in the title, and it'll fit perfectly for that prompt and the challenge. Prompt number 2 is an orphan as main character. Now this is interesting because it used to be that all children's books featured an orphan as the main character, or sometimes like a whole group of them. But in going through my audio backlog and looking up all the middle grade books, I found it's not as common a trope anymore. Maybe because it was overdone for so long. But I did find one audiobook on my backlog that does have an orphan. It's called Set Me Free. And I forgot to write down authors for these, so I'm sorry about that. Set Me Free, I'm trying to think. I think it is about a deaf girl teaching an orphaned deaf girl how to sign and understand language. And I guess the orphan has never been exposed to language in any form, so it's a real challenge. So that sounds great. I'm looking forward to that one. Prompt number 3, a contemporary book. There were plenty of those on my backlog. I've narrowed it down to 2 for the challenge, either Can You See Me or The Graveyard Riddle, which I guess is a companion novel to The Goldfish Boy, which I very much enjoyed. Prompt 4 for middle grade March is set in Asia or featuring an Asian main character. And I found the perfect book for that, and I've already started. It's called Room to Dream by Kelly Yang. It's about a young girl who lives in California. She's a Chinese immigrant, and she and her family go back to visit China. So it's both about an Asian main character and set in an Asian country. I've already started that on audio, so I'll tell you a little more about it during my Friday Reads segment. And finally, number 5, a book older than you. Well, this was tougher for me because, like I said, I am trying to clear out some of that TBR, both in audio and in print. But I still have some of the books from my childhood. And I was looking at my shelf, and there are some classics there that I've read many times. Things like The Secret Garden, A Wrinkle in Time, my favorite, Pippi Longstocking, books like that I both read as a kid and read to my own kids. But there's one book on the shelf that I haven't read since I was a kid, and it was published before I was born. It's called Katie John by Mary Calhoun. I don't think a lot of people have heard of this, but when I was a kid, like about middle grade age, this was my favorite book. I loved it. And I haven't read it since. I think I probably read it several times when I was a kid, but I'm interested to reread it and see if it holds up. This was published in 1960, so I was born in 1965, so that works. And those are my plans for the middle grade March challenge. And again, I'll link down below to the original video so that you can check out what the challenge is all about and see the list of prompts. Okay, and on to Friday Reads. I've just started 3 new books, so I don't know a lot about these yet, but I'll tell you what I know. As I was explaining about Booktopia, some of the books that are whose authors are going to be featured at Booktopia, the books that are highlighted aren't released yet. But there was one that was already released and was available for review. So I downloaded a copy of that right away. It is called Country of Origin by Dalia Azim. And I should have found out whether this is her first novel or I don't know. I'm sure I'll learn about it in May at Booktopia. But so far, I'm not very far into it yet. I'm reading it on my Kindle, so I think I'm like 7%, so I'm not very far into it yet. But I love that this book is set in Egypt, beginning in 1952. So this is a part of the world and a piece of history that I know almost nothing about. And I always love when I get to read a book that, teaches me something about the world. I was saying to my husband last night, I have learned so much about history and different countries and, economics and politics through reading, even through reading fiction. It's just amazing. So anyway, this is a novel about a young girl named Hala. And at the start of the novel in 1952, she's just 14 years old. So her family is Muslim. They live in Egypt, in Cairo. Her family's pretty well off. So she's lived a very protected life. She's been attending a British school for girls, like a private school. This is one of those pieces of history I did not know, that the British ran Egypt for a while, for quite a while, for a long time. So in 1952, the British were still in control. Hala was attending this girls' school, British girls' school in town, and she was very, very protected by her family, as young girls in Muslim countries often are. So she was never allowed to go out on her own. They had a driver who took her to school. Occasionally she would go with her parents to visit family, but, she mostly is confined to her house. And at this point in history, one day she's up on the roof of her house, that's like her way of escaping, and sees that there are fires burning all over Cairo. Buildings are being set on fire. There's just, and it turns out it's the beginning of Egypt's revolution. I don't know if there's an official name for it now in history, but it's the beginning of their revolution to become independent. So over the next few years, her dad's in the military. They managed to oust both the British government and King Farouk, who many citizens see as a puppet of the British government. And where I am now, they're just beginning to think about how they want to rule themselves independently. So that's what's going on in the background politically. But in the foreground, you've got this young girl, Hala, who's lived this very protected life and, is just beginning with this revolution to learn some things about the outside world. So I have no idea what else is going to happen in this novel, but I am already fully engaged in it. The setting is wonderful, and like I said, something I have not read about before, and I really love the characters so far too. So that's Country of Origin by Dalia Azim. Next up, as I mentioned, for middle grade March, I have started this graphic novel, The Creepy Case Files of Margot Malou, which is a 3-book series so far. And this one's called The Tangled Web. So I just love this series. It's so much fun. You can see from the cover. So this is Charles. He's one of the main characters. And his family moved from the suburbs into the city, a city named Echo City. And his parents bought an apartment building to manage in the city. So this is totally new for Charles, and all this happens in the first book. Totally new for Charles, but he soon discovers there is, and I think, make sure I've got it right, there is a troll living in his basement. And he talks to his new friend in the building named Kevin. There's a picture of them here. Okay. So there's Charles and Kevin. And Kevin says, oh, if you've got a monster problem, you have to call Margot Malou. She is the monster mediator. So this is this kick-ass little girl who mediates problems between humans and monsters. So kids know better than adults, but most adults aren't aware that there's this whole underground city, underground both literally and figuratively, of monsters living among humans. So when problems crop up between the two populations, people call Margot, or kids usually call Margot. So Charles calls Margot. He expects her to get rid of the troll in the basement, but instead she checks on his well-being and asks what's going on with him and introduces Charles to him. And Charles finds out that the troll actually has a name, Marcus, that he loves Beanie Babies just like Charles does. And so, as usual, Margot finds a way for them to live peaceably together. So now this is the third book. I think here we've got from the cover, I would say, some sort of giant spider monster. And Margot's out of town, so Charles and Kevin have to tackle this one on their own. So I just started the first couple of pages this morning. Not very far into it, but I know I'll love it because it's a great series. I should show you some of the drawings because they're spectacular. So he's got this, the author is Drew Wang, and he's got this great illustration style that I just love because it's colorful and, you know, the monsters are very imaginative. So here's a scene where Margot is sitting down to, it looks like a poker game with a varied group of monsters. So I'm looking forward to seeing what happens in this one. That's The Creepy Case Files of Margot Malou, The Tangled Web by Drew Wang. And finally, for my audiobook, which I also just started yesterday, I am diving into Middle Grade March again. This one is for, The Creepy Case Files of Margot Malou was for 5 or more words in the title. This one is for set in Asia or featuring an Asian main character. And as I said, I chose Room to Dream by Kelly Yang. So, again, just started it, but I'm enjoying it so far. This is about a girl, I think she's in 7th grade. Yeah, because she's adjusting to middle school, and there aren't a lot of kids that she knows. Her name is Mia Tang. Her family is Chinese American. They run a hotel in town. I think it takes place near Los Angeles. I forget which town, but right near Los Angeles in that area. So Mia, she does have 2 best friends that luckily are at her middle school with her, Lupe and Jason. Jason's really into cooking. Lupe's family lives at the hotel that Mia's family runs, and the 3 of them are really good friends. Well, something big's about to happen for Mia and her family because they've been saving up for years and years to take a vacation, and they're finally able to do it. And they got their visas. They are going back to China to visit. So I believe that Mia was actually born in China, and they haven't been back in many years. So she can't wait to get back there to see Beijing, to see her cousins and her grandparents. They're just really excited about this trip. So already in the beginning of the novel, some of the scenes at school show some mild intolerance and racism towards all minorities, really. But Mia feels some of it herself as a Chinese American. And so she's kind of struggling with some of this. Maybe moving from her smaller elementary school to the big, more diverse middle school is the first time she's noticed some of this. So that's going on in her mind as her family's getting ready for this amazing trip to China. So I think most of the book does take place in China, and then, you know, they come back to the US after. So I'm enjoying it so far. Don't know what's going to happen. That's called Room to Dream by Kelly Yang, and that is a middle grade novel on audio. So that's what I'm reading this weekend. I would love to hear what you're reading. Let me know in the comments down below. Tell me if you're participating in Middle Grade March and what you're reading this week.